You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast as we drop in for a midweek special, kind of breaking news. Not hardly causing an earthquake in the field of F1, but Sauber have basically completed the driver lineups by announcing that Zhou and Bottas are going to be out of their team, and they're bringing in a rookie, Bortoletto. So I'm not an expert at this kind of junior series programs, but I do want to talk about the exit of Bottas in particular. But I've got Chris Stevens you're kind of an expert on all the series and the junior series, and you watch them all coming through.
I know everything, Spanners. I'm here to educate
You're an oracle.
And enlighten.
You're an oracle. Okay, good. I do
Not
want
Oracle
you,
Red Bull Racing?
I do want you to enlighten me, actually. So before I think we talk about the exit of Bottas, I'm going to lean on your expertise then. Who is this youngster coming in? I've been surprised by every new name that's come along. So I don't remember hearing about Behrman before he came in and did that Saudi Arabia race as a super sub. Nobody had heard of Colapinto, in my defence. And I've only heard of this new rookie called, I just said it,
Gabriel Bortoletto.
Bortoletto. Did I say it right in the intro? Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Let's roll with that. No one wind the tape back. He's the F2 champion, right?
No.
Oh, who won the F2
He's the F2
then?
championship leader.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the same thing. He's the champion-elect.
No,
No?
it's far from over.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, tell us about what is basically going to be a new star in Formula One then. Who is this guy?
You know what? You should watch the Formula 2 stuff because you'll learn about who these people are when they come in. And you might like them before they've even driven a Formula 1 car.
Oh, right.
Who is Gabriel Bortoletto? He is the reigning Formula 3 champion. Well, I say reigning. Obviously, the F3 season is finished. So technically, he's last year's.
Is he the former? Is he the former?
No, there's no such thing as a former champion, Spanners. But he is last year's Formula 3 champion in his debut year in Formula 2, and he's currently leading the championship and involved in quite a tight championship scrap with Isaac Hadjar, who's part of the Red Bull Junior Academy. And Bortoletto, interestingly, part of the McLaren Junior Development program. But he will be released from his McLaren affiliation at the end of this year, obviously joining Sauber. So Sauber have not taken one of their own, because you'll know that they've got Zane Maloney in Formula 2, but he's joining the Formula E grid. So maybe Sauber have had to look elsewhere because now Teo Porcher is out of the mix. And so Bortoletto is the next one along, I guess. But, he's been sort of quite a king of consistency, I think. His Formula 3 campaign wasn't built on smashing every single pole position and then winning the feature race and dominating and all this. It was built consistency. And his debut campaign in Formula 2 has been very, very similar as well. And especially in this year's field that's just been so tight. There's so many good drivers in the field this year that's really all you can do. So you might look at it on the surface and say he's only had 2 wins this year. But to win 2 in your rookie year in Formula 2 and amongst the field we have this year, bearing in mind we've had 16 different winners in 24 races this year. So the only person who's got more wins than him this year is his nearest title rival, Isaac Hadjar.
Okay, but they are in a position, Sauber, where there's so many drivers that want that seat. So you've almost described it there as who else would they have? But they could have retained Bottas. They could have retained Zhou Guanyu, because I assume that there's money from China. And we were told for ages when we were trying to justify, why would you have Zhou? People were saying, but it's the Chinese market. It's very, very important to unlock the Chinese market. Is it now suddenly not? It's not important anymore? And you've got drivers lining up who have backing. So there's the Danish money. I believe that Magnussen comes with a little bit of money as well. Colapinto has some talent that we can see on show. So there's no shortage of drivers who could turn up with a paycheck, who have Formula One experience.
Of course, but Bortoletto also, sort of unlocks Brazil, doesn't he, really? This is the first Brazilian Formula One driver we're going to have full-time, anyway, since Felipe Massa in 2017. So I think there is a slight element of that. But why you wouldn't keep Zhou? I mean, he's been not the highest performer in Formula One, I think it's safe to say. Bottas is sort of on his way out anyway. I don't think he has much else to offer Formula One. When you consider that Sauber is going to become Audi in 2026 as well, so really it's Audi that are signing off on the driver lineups for the future, because they both will be Audi drivers, Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. And when you say it together for the first time, Bortoleto and Hülkenberg, suddenly you realize what a beautiful blend of youth and experience that is. So when it becomes Audi in 26, Bortoleto will have a year under his belt. Hülkenberg will be sort of bringing him up to speed, I guess, and they'll be working together to try and help transform the team along with Audi to bring the Sauber back up to the front end of the grid with their new engine for 2026. And I think, Audi maybe wanted more experience, but obviously they were sort of messed around a little bit by Sainz. And that's where Hülkenberg ended up coming in. I don't think either of them are their first choice, but so rarely do you end up getting your first choice. I think the only one who's ended up with their first choice is Ferrari, with Leclerc and Hamilton. Yeah. So I think it's a really nice blend of youth and experience. It's looking towards the future, and we're going to have a very young bunch of drivers coming in next year, like 5 rookies, basically. When eventually Lawson gets confirmed for next year. It's odd to think of Lawson as a rookie because he's been around for a couple of years now, but he's never done more than 5 races.
Well, I wasn't quite ready to go away from Sauber just yet, but I think the rookie, is he a rookie question, I find so boring. So I want to just kind of address it once and get it out of the way. It's what do we mean by rookie? Generally by rookie, you mean, are you in your rookie year? So if you did 1 appearance or 2 appearances like Behrman, next year's obviously his rookie season. He's gone in with a contract. That's when you have your whole pre-season testing, and that's the year you judge it on. Lawson's kind of pushing and testing that boundary of whether this year counts. Because won't he end up have been doing 11? I think he'll have done 11 races by the end.
So the 3 he did last year, or however many he did, I think it was 3 races last year.
Oh, that was last year, wasn't it? Cool, yeah. Time flies.
So he did 3 last year, and then I don't know what it is this year, 8 maybe. So he'll have done maybe half a season. So certainly for the start of next year, you can call him a rookie, because also they'll be on a bunch of tracks he's never raced on as well. So there's that.
Yeah, so I'm happy to call him a rookie and Behrman a rookie. So we've got Behrman,
100%,
Lawson, Bortoleto,
Antonelli,
and who else?
And Doohan.
And Doohan. And then, if these rumours are true about Colapinto going directly to Red Bull, don't pass go, don't go to jail.
No.
Why?
Right. So the way I see it, the most likely scenario in a Colapinto still being an F1 scenario is Lawson to Red Bull, Colapinto to RB.
Wow, I wouldn't take that. I don't know. Would you take that? Ooh.
Well, it's better than having no seat in Formula One, isn't it? Colapinto.
Yeah, okay. So what we're going to have is we're going to have Lawson, who's not going to have looked as fast as Tsunoda by the end of the season, because go Yuki. I think the statistic I'm quoting at the moment is 4-0 in qualifying for Grand Prix.
But it's like it's a U-turn to last year, isn't it? Because...
So, yeah, but last season, he was handsomely beating Ricciardo. So that was like a not issue. And then the races that Lawson came in, it was a bit of a dead period for Tsunoda. He wasn't just like doing well but finishing behind Lawson. He was having out and out bad races. So you go, okay, you need a little bit more time for a side-by-side comparison. But the statistic that suits my narrative best is Grand Prix qualifying, because I was including the sprint races and sprint qualifying until Lawson out-qualified him in Interlagos in the sprint. So now that doesn't work. So now only Grand Prix count, and we'll see. It still looks to me like Tsunoda's... I'm confident at the moment Tsunoda's looking strong. So I think Lawson will need more than the end of the season to really kind of go, no, I'm better.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because Lawson is next in the queue to move up to the senior Red Bull team, regardless of what Yuki does. Because, bear in mind, he hasn't even driven the car, right? And that's why Honda are pushing for it. You got to remember the Honda affiliation with Red Bull is going away at the end of next year. And also, they prefer Lawson. They just do, like, as a person, right? So I think that there is an element of, regardless of what happens between Yuki and Lawson, unless Lawson absolutely ruins the end of this season for the team, he'll be on the grid in some capacity, whether it's with RB or maybe replacing Perez. If it doesn't happen at the start of the year, it will probably happen mid-season next year as well. So Lawson is more of a long-term driver, potentially, whereas Yuki, he will go wherever Honda goes, basically, which will be to Aston, most likely. Or he won't end up on the grid.
Well, Red Bull haven't had a Honda power unit for quite some time, Chris, so I don't really understand what you're talking about with this Honda affiliation. They got an engine freeze for being a new engine manufacturer. They were exempt from that. Therefore, they're Red Bull powertrains. But yeah, Honda...
It still says HRC on the side of the car.
I know. That's one of the biggest, just fully overlooked hand-waving scams of the last several seasons, is this whole, oh no, it's a Red Bull powertrain.
It's a well-played hand, just like their Tag Heuer engines back in 2016.
Well, yeah, but the Tag Heuer was just a commercial agreement, really. So we've rebadged it. We've taken our money from Tag Heuer, so we call it Tag Heuer. So we've just called it a Tag Heuer, to the point when they said, are you disappointed in the Renault engine? And Christian Horner in a press conference said, I don't know what you mean. We have a Tag Heuer. And you go, oh, come on.
Come on,
just
dude.
have a conversation, man. You're harshing my mellow. But this one is more serious, because there was serious implications. They were basically like, we're now Red Bull powertrain, so we need an exemption from the engine freeze so that we can, we just need to, shore up some reliability and catch up. And then all of a sudden, the Red Bull powertrain is a beast. Yet all the while, when a Red Bull powertrain goes wrong, it goes back to Honda. And they literally say, it's gone back to Japan. You go, well, why? Because it's not a Honda engine. And, of course, Tsunoda is there because of the affiliation with Honda as well. It's ridiculous. Honda have been pushing for Tsunoda to get a test, and Red Bull, I think, have just been putting their fingers in their ears and saying, la, 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 I'm not listening. So I think that's that. So you're right. So what is the justification for moving Lawson up, though, if he's gone in there and not actually looked that great against Tsunoda, who seems to be the benchmark for them? He's like their test bed.
Oh, well, he'll be better than Perez. That's why... That's the whole issue that we're trying to address with the senior Red Bull team. Yeah, I think that will then create space for Colapinto.
Stephen's picking me up. You're always allowed to make reliability improvements. Okay, I'm trying to refresh my memory. I think there might be a limit on that as well. Because, of course, if you can make something that's, for example, makes it less likely to overheat, and it's to do with, say, the cooling, well, you could always argue that a cooling fix is actually for reliability. But that just means you can ramp it up. I mean, take the fan out of your computer for 30 seconds as a quick test and watch your PC melt. And if you have an upgrade in your PC and you aren't able to use all that power, you'll actually have to restrict it if you don't have good enough cooling. Put a bigger fan on it, and then all of a sudden you can unlock it. But you're absolutely right. So the engine freeze was for performance-related upgrades specifically. I hesitated to say that because I wasn't sure, but I'm going to take Stephen as a oracle, as the Chris,
as an oracle Red Bull Racing. Yeah.
There you go. So all of that means that Tsunoda's just not seen as someone for the main Red Bull team. Maybe he is still there and was always there because of the Honda link. That's fine, but I think that doesn't tell the big picture of what a good driver he is. Because on merit, he was better than De Vries, better than Ricciardo. He's holding his own, certainly. We don't know the full story against Lawson, yet he is doomed to never be a Red Bull driver. Lawson is ahead of him in the queue. Ricciardo was meant to be ahead of him in the queue, and Colapinto is probably ahead of him in the queue already.
Yeah, that's probably true already after a handful of races.
Rolando says, can we go one episode without bad-mouthing Perez? Can we just note that it isn't me that does that? It's the crew. And also, it's the same in the WhatsApp chat as well, in our panel WhatsApp chat. It's we could be talking about how Tuesday is an awkward day because you're not really over Monday, but there's still 4 working days left. And probably Brad will come in and go, yeah, but that's because Perez can't qualify. You go, how? Why?
No, it's called a Perez day.
So I'll defend you, Rolando. I'm still waiting for the book to come out. There's some story behind it. There's no way that gap is representative. I don't think they've got. You're not telling me they've got the same equal spec of cars, but there's no point in me arguing now. Like I said, I'm going to wait for the autobiography from Perez, which will probably be out in February at this point. So nobody seems to think that he's going to be driving next year.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was still on the grid. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to me to have him start the season, but maybe Red Bull start him, at the team at the beginning of the year and say, right, you're on your last legs. You got 6 races, and then he'll be terrible for 5 races, and then the 6th race will come along and he'll be within half a second of Verstappen, and then they'll be like, oh, well, he's good for the rest of the year.
Okay, so you don't like the rumour that perhaps they were trying to invoke a clause in Carlos Sainz's Williams contract that if Red Bull or Mercedes come in for him, he was allowed to abandon their agreement, and therefore Colapinto, I guess, would stay at Williams.
Well, apparently the Colapinto meeting is Carlos Slim wanting to fund Colapinto. So as soon as he's not backing Perez anymore, then that is Perez. Like, that's the final nail in the coffin. So
yeah, this is why I'm thinking if the Carlos Slim money is real, if that's a real thing, then he could be going up to the senior seat. Because I don't think you're going to have Carlos Slim going, okay, I'm going to transfer my funding for him to go and circulate for a couple of seasons against Tsunoda in a Toro Rosso.
Maybe, but he needs experience. You can't just bung him in after a handful of races to go and compete with Max Verstappen. Because there's no scenario where that ends up coming off well for anyone, really, apart from Max. So
but it's almost like, who are we feeding to the Verstappen meat grinder next? Isn't it? That's the thing. Like, I can't think
whose
of
career is going to get destroyed next.
I can't think of a driver who's so adequately just chewed up and spat out every teammate he's gone up against in a platform like that.
Hamilton was pretty similar.
I don't know. I don't know if you can compare it, because politically, I don't think Hamilton has the same kind of aptitude. So I don't think the Hamilton pairing is as good as the Jos Verstappen Max Verstappen pairing. Like, they've gone in and they've got a death grip on Red Bull. This is why, like, you can't tell me, you cannot convince me that there is no pressure from the Verstappen side that makes sure that he's basically got Schumacher status in that team. With Jos Verstappen, with his lack of traction control, listening to Schumacher's car going, hang on a minute, that sounds very traction control-y. But no, this is why I think he's got the number one status there. If you're in that position, why would you want a fair fight? Why would you want to risk a Piastri situation where you're going about your business trying to win a championship, but then Piastri's taking the odd win from you and you're in equal cars with no delta and no chance to overtake if anything goes wrong? You don't want to be in that position. You absolutely positively should never, ever get drawn into a fair fight. If you're in a military unit, right, you want 3-1. So if there's 4 enemy, you want to be a full fire team. If there's a fire team, you want to be in a platoon. If there's a platoon, you want a company. Never get in a fair fight, Chris, ever.
No, 100%. But where is Red Bull going to finish in the Constructors' Championship?
Like eighth at the moment, I think.
Exactly, yeah. Right? They need it. And I even said this at the end of last year, right? Where they had to assume worst case scenario, which was that everyone's caught up to them. And with Verstappen and Perez, they would not win the Constructors' Championship. So they needed a second driver who can bring it home second to Verstappen, not 7th.
Oh, Christopher. Oh, you sweet boy. You're so... I love how you like to see the best in everyone. But... why do they want to finish first in the Constructors' Championship?
Right.
What's the incentive?
I know because money, Spanners. Money. No. Money makes the world go round.
Oh, allow me, please. Okay, so
go on.
Before the cost cap, they had money, right? And they would spend more than they're spending now. And they're still making a profit. So what do you want if you're... You don't think they're making a profit now?
No, now they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
eventually. But before that, you were lucky if you broke even.
Okay. Do Red Bull the mega corporation need to make money from Formula One.
Yes. Because otherwise they'll stop. The whole point of the Red Bull is the marketing.
Yeah,
right?
It's a loss leader.
Well,
It always was.
yeah. That it's not necessarily the F1 team making a profit in itself. It's about getting those sales returns back, right? So it's kind of hard to actually link the two up, I guess. But the Formula One team does need to prove to be, beneficial.
Okay, so it can't be losing money hand over fist. There's going to be benefits such as advertising and global marketing and stuff like that. Yeah. But if you're in a cost cap situation where you're actually restricted on how much you spend, then by giving up 30 million in prize money to get yourself more wind tunnel time, you're effectively buying extra wind tunnel time with 30 million and still making a profit. So actually, that's not the worst idea in the world. And how would you guarantee that you get that extra wind tunnel time and don't accidentally win the Constructors' Championship? By having a second car that is unable to get to the front of the grid, stick with that driver for a couple of years, and then when you've got yourself in a good position with wind tunnel time for the new regulations in 2026, you say, we can't put up with this driver's performance anymore. We have to replace him. And scene.
But what I really hate about that, Spanners, and I'm not saying it's not true, but if that is the attitude that teams are taking now, then you may as well pack up and go home because you're not competing to win anymore, right? Was it, oh no, I don't want to be 12 times Constructors' Champions. I'll settle for 7. No, that is just the antithesis of sport. So
Hang on, it's the what?
They're doing. Just pack up and go home.
It's the what?
Antithesis.
What does it mean? It's the
opposite.
Wow. Come on, mate. You know who you're talking to. The direct opposite of someone. Okay. Well, I don't think so, because I think the competition in F1 has always been who can get their driver to be world champion. I don't think anyone's ever valued the world constructors as high. Not even close. The only reason would have been prize money. That's the only reason to covet it. But I don't think that's even a major consideration for Red Bull. I honestly don't. I think if you say to any of the top 3 teams now, Ferrari, Mercedes or Red Bull, look, we're going to sacrifice 30 million of your prize fund because we're trying to save money. Okay, so would you give up 30 million, but we'll give you 15% extra wind tunnel time? All 3 of those teams take it.
Trouble is, I don't know how much wind tunnel time costs. That could be a horrendous charge. Yeah. But Spanners, if they, why don't you go to Milton Keynes?
Why don't you go to Milton Keynes?
Go to Milton Keynes. Go to the Red Bull factory.
You can't just make people go.
Try and take one of their Constructors' Championship trophies from the early 2010s and see if they let you just walk out with it, if they clearly don't give a toss about them.
I don't think that's not fair, right? What you've done there is you've done a straw man argument. I didn't say
I know. I'm being silly.
The value of it is less.
Comedic effect.
The value of it is less. For me, the F1 competition is which entry finishes ahead. That's the key. That's the big prize in Formula One. I think every single team, given the choice, would take the drivers. So but to me, that all links in. I'm following the money, I'm following the incentives, and it validates my narrative that Perez is actually good, really, honestly. So that's why I like that one.
Don't know. It feels it's I don't know.
Thank you, Hayden.
Embarrassing for them.
Thank you, Hayden. It already happened in 2021. They didn't even try to win the Constructors' Championship.
That was a changing of the guard moment, though, wasn't it? Where they were toppling Mercedes. They're now in an era where they are the top dog. Well, they were. Not anymore.
Interesting. Let us know what you reckon about our theory by joining us in Discord at patreon.com/missedapex and link your Discord account. Or you can email us spanners or feedback at missedapex.net. So spanners at missedapex.net. And come and follow me on Twitter at spannersready. At spannersready. And here now, because on Twitter you can see, even if I block you, you can still see my tweets. You can screenshot them and spread my fame on your own account if you want. I don't know.
That's a great new feature.
You've led us down. I'm trying to talk about Bottas. And you've led us down this conspiratorial path.
About Bottas, and we haven't even said a thing about it.
So it's big news, really, because Valtteri Bottas has been, I think, an absolute gem in Formula One. And he seems 100%. Like just a nice bloke. He wears his heart on his sleeve in a very kind of different way. So, like Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, they wear their hearts on their mouths. Valtteri Bottas was always kind of reserved. And I love the way he's spoken about his recent resurgence as kind of this meme lord, and how he's talked about, feeling kind of repressed emotionally and not showing his emotions, and looking back on that with a bit of regret. And I think a lot of men, I think particularly, can associate with that. If you're brought up in that kind of like machismo environment where feelings are bad, feelings are failures, Chris.
Yeah.
Like, I have joked with my son, like, oh no, I shouldn't admit to this, but it was a joke to cheer him up. Like, he was crying about something, and I was like, son, I can see your emotion on your face. Your emotion's leaking onto your face. And that was how I was kind of brought up. Emotion was always a failure. And so he's got to this point then where suddenly towards the end of his career, he's able to enjoy it, be a bit more expressive, but expressive in the stunted way that someone who has repressed their feelings for a few decades would do that. And then all of a sudden, he's comfortable, he's found his place in F1, and it's all over. And I feel like he was definitely someone who was given the shot at the title. So it doesn't always happen for everyone. If you look at the likes of Ocon and Gasly, probably equal or greater talents than Bottas, we can argue that, but they're unlikely to get their final shot at the title, and that's the dream. He went in, did well at Williams, got his shot up against statistically the greatest driver of all time, and not everyone gets that opportunity. And then when it didn't work out, was pretty honest in a way that I can get on board with, just saying, yeah, I think I could be as fast as him over a lap. But he always pointed to Lewis Hamilton's brutal consistency, and he was in there good enough to take qualifying wins from Lewis Hamilton, good enough to win the odd race, good enough to play Skittles and 10-pin bowling with Red Bulls and McLarens at Hungaroring when it really, really mattered. 2021 Hungaroring, if you haven't seen that. And then ultimately, it didn't work out. And this is where you're meant to have your midfield revival at Sauber, and there's just been no opportunity to do that. And I don't think he carries a lot of backing. I don't think he has an awful lot of backing, does he? So he's relying on
really, no.
Getting paid. And I think people would be surprised. More of the seats are being paid for now than is openly talked about, whether that's personal money or bringing sponsorships in. So he's found himself in a position where there is just no seats at the table. And instead of going on and having kind of a Hulkenberg-like journeyman career, he finds himself out on his ear. So how come he can't forge a career going forward in the midfield, and Hulkenberg has been doing it for like 20 years?
That's a really...
it's not a bad question, is it?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a really good question. Why Audi would have chosen Hulkenberg over Bottas, because there's no denying Valtteri's a very safe pair of hands and a good peddler. I guess there is obviously the national element of it. Audi being a German brand, potentially wanting a German
for now. We'll talk about the Qatar news, I think.
I feel like that's maybe a slightly dated argument, but there's no denying that Hulkenberg... Sorry?
What's the dated argument? Having a national appropriate driver?
Wanting the same nationality.
Do you woke Gen Zs, you always want to pretend that countries don't exist. People like it when it's the person from where they're from. That has a genuine appeal. That's why Alpine wanted the French drivers. That's why we do all the British bias here.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot.
But yeah, so I don't think
I just believe countries are, lines in the sand drawn with a stick, but whatever.
Drawn with a sword. So I think that might be going away anyway. But yeah, Hulkenberg, you think he's just been taken there as a German?
Look, maybe Hulkenberg is definitely a good talent. We know this. Slightly older than Bottas, though, isn't he? So, I mean, they're both sort of in their mid to late 30s now, aren't they? So they're both sort of approaching that your career is done.
37 years. Hulkenberg's 37 years old.
I know.
Oh, okay, wow.
I know. It's scary, that, isn't it? So
you can hear me typing, and Bottas is 35. Yeah, right. Oh. This is the problem, though. When you've been watching F1 too long, I would not have guessed Bottas was 35, and I wouldn't have guessed Hulkenberg at 37 either. So they're, two of the oldest guys. And when you look at the fact that we were talking about maybe 6 rookies on the grid, if Colapinto ends up getting a seat, that's 6, right?
Yeah, that would be 6.
Wow. I mean, last season...
We had none.
There was none.
This year we had none.
And it's as if the driver market took that personally. Oh, yeah? You think you can keep all the seats? No, I'm giving you 6. So there was always going to be casualties. And I think if we did a guess at the beginning of the season and said, well, 6 drivers are going to lose their seats, who do you think they're going to be? Would we have included Bottas in that list? Probably. Zhou. So
probably,
who's out?
Zhou, 100%.
Yeah. Magnussen. Yes, you would, because it hasn't been going well, has it, in the head-to-head against Hulkenberg? Who's out? Ricardo, maybe a little bit of a surprise because we thought he was destined to
a minor surprise.
Yeah. How many am I up to? So who else has lost out? Oh, Sargent.
Sargent. Yeah, that was the obvious one.
And we're all missing the 6th one.
And then who was the other one?
I'm sure the chat room will save us. So that's a massive change. So it was always going to be a tough ask, I think. But Bottas, he can look back on his career and he can say, I had that shot for the title against the best. Not many people would have passed that test anyway. And actually, he didn't always look great. And he was not helpful as Perez in the 2021 fight. Not that he's obliged to be. But I don't know. To me, I would say if there's any kind of criticism, when it was wheel to wheel, he never seemed to put up a reasonable defense. He never seemed to have that mentality of, you can pass me, but it'll cost you a leg. There was none of that kind of ruthlessness. So do you need to be a bit of a knob to...
He's a bit of a gentleman racer, wasn't he? But that's, with Valtteri, what you see is what you get, right? And he definitely does still have a career in motorsport ahead of him. I'm sure he'll wind up somewhere in sports car racing in the not too distant future. I think he'd be really great at that. And anyone who can sort of go toe to toe with Lewis Hamilton in qualifying surely is going to be someone decent in another series. He's done a lot to be proud of. That is for sure. And the biggest disgrace of his career is that he's not as quick as Lewis Hamilton, right? So he's done all right there, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but the Sauber stuff didn't exactly... hasn't really dominated. He's bottom of the table at the moment, isn't he? And
but what can you do with that car? He literally has the worst car. Do you know what? Actually, I put this in the group chat last week or something. We keep describing the Sauber as like this god-awful, terrible, woeful machine. Yet it is quicker than last year's Red Bull, like in terms of lap time. It is quicker than the most dominant Formula One car in history, which is a staggering thing to suddenly think about because the Sauber probably feels terrible to drive.
Yeah, I'll bet. Oh, by the way, it would be Perez, wouldn't it? Because if it was the 6th driver to lose, if Colapinto comes in, that would be
because we're theorizing about Franco,
Yeah, because Perez isn't going to go to AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, VCarb. He isn't going to go to... VCarb.
But it won't be called VCarb.
What is it next year?
Next year it's going to be Racing Bulls, I think.
That's so stupid. All right. I think.
Do you know what? Because they have the whole Hugo Boss thing as well. I got really confused in Brazil, and I don't know, maybe I'd had too much cough syrup or something. But it said Hugo on the back of the suits, and I went, "Who is Hugo? Why? What? No, it's Yuki, not Hugo."
Cough syrup. He means straight vodka from the bottle. He puts it in the fridge so he doesn't have to dilute it with ice. So yeah, that would be Perez that goes there. So we say, what could he do? Well, he could go and embarrass Zhou Guanyu, couldn't he? He could say, right, I'm going to go there and I'm going to make you look so out of your depth that everyone realizes how great I am. But he hasn't really. And so we don't have a good read on either of those drivers. Zhou has carved out this reputation as, well, if you're going to be a buy-in driver, then be like Zhou Guanyu because he doesn't get any trouble. He's looked on pace with Bottas. It could be one of those things where you go, well, a new lineup in here. What happens if you put Verstappen and Hamilton in those Saubers this season? Do we think they could make a difference? Probably. They could nick a point.
Yeah, you're talking about the odd point, really, aren't you? I mean, bearing in mind, at the start of this season, which is arguably when they were most competitive, they had that flurry of pit stop issues where they were stationary for a minute and a half. So that kind of ruled out the first few races of the season, basically. And I think the only time that team has been properly competitive in the last few years was the start of the ground effect regulations. When were they still Alfa Romeo? In 2022, I forget, but
Yes.
The only time they were sort of decently competitive, which was when they were like the only car that could meet the weight limit at the start of the ground effect era, and so they would be like fighting for points on a regular basis. And in fairness, Bottas was the one scooping them up.
All right. Well, I think, that's more or less covered what we wanted to react to today. So just looking at that final confirmed lineup, Sergio Perez is still showing as a Red Bull driver. So he does have a contract for 2025.
Yeah, he was announced. Like, they made an official announcement and saying, yes, his contract is, for next year. But that doesn't mean it's not going to change.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's have a quick rundown then. So we know the Ferrari one. Kimi Antonelli is going to be the rookie up against George Russell. To me, that's going to be one of the real key battles. If you look at George Russell's... Right, he's obviously fast, obviously, but has had struggles on a Sunday. If Antonelli doesn't look as fast as Russell on a Sunday, people are going to start asking questions because they're going to go, well, why doesn't he have the same Sunday pace as Hamilton? But hopefully Antonelli isn't going to have the same qualifying issues that Hamilton has had this year. And Hamilton's are going to disappear at Ferrari. They are going to disappear at Ferrari. Antonelli's probably not going to have those same issues. So they're going to be squaring up near each other on the grid. And Antonelli, reputation-wise, you want to be getting on top of that race pace fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we will have to give him the benefit of the doubt for the first few races.
He can have 2 races. 2 you can have.
Hey, look, even Lewis Hamilton spent 6 races, not winning.
What?
In 2007.
That's not true. I thought, didn't he win his 3rd race?
No, he won his 7th race.
Was it? Okay, but he was
in Canada.
But he was throwing it down the inside of Alonso and fighting Alonso in that time, he was straight away.
Regular on the podium for sure.
Yeah, but in those days they had loads and loads of testing, whereas Antonelli's had a few.
Yeah, no. So this is the different. Antonelli's primary preparation would have been the sim, a couple of FP1 outings, and then preseason testing. That's
okay.
it.
All right. So then we got the same lineup at McLaren. Aston Martin has Lance Stroll. Confirmed. I think they've confirmed that he can be there as long as he wants. They're going to hold on until Newey builds a car, and then they're going to see what that is. I think if they turn up with a pig in 26, he'll lose interest.
Well, the thing is, so they have both been confirmed, quote unquote, for 2026 as well, Alonso and Stroll. But again, that doesn't mean it's not going to change. And I think the likelihood is that, of course, by then, Aston Martin's hypercar Valkyrie program will be well up and running, and I think they would move Stroll in there and then have Yuki come in as the Honda guy, because by then they'll have a Honda engine in the Aston Martin.
I spent a lot of time looking at that video of Stroll driving into the gravel.
You and me both, mate.
I can't get over it. There's so many more different stadium angles, and people were chanting Bortoletto's name as well,
and Drogovic's name, because obviously Drogovic is the reserve driver at Aston.
It's just, I can't get over how you have that spin, and apparently they had a bit of a brake issue. So hey, no foul, a bit of a brake issue. Alonso said he was struggling with it as well. It's just the decision tree that was going on in his head, because he started reversing, and you go, well, if you're reversing, you may as well reverse all the way out, and he just made that decision. Yeah. Not even like spin it up and go to the right, but actually just spin it up and drive into the left.
Very slowly go through some wet gravel. Not
even that fast. And so it made me look up other ridiculous, because I was like, someone was asking if you ever seen anything like that, and I was like, no. There's one with Rosset at Monaco, maybe, where he had a half spin in the middle of the final couple of corners, and this is all from me just Googling dumbest F1 crashes. And then he tried to spin it up and couldn't get any rotation and just drove straight into a barrier. That's the closest runner-up. And then you've got Maldonado in China in 2014, clearly trying to change a setting. And then the
just drove off the track.
But then he has another one where in China, it was completely different to the Lewis Hamilton China pit lane one, where he just drove into the pits and straight into the wall. And you go, "Phew."
But he did it. He did a similar one at Spa, where because when you come out of Speaker's Corner, which is the corner that everyone calls the corner with no name incorrectly, right?
The left-hander
and there's that
downhill.
Slight little like right kink before you go into Puan. He ended up like on the grass.
That's barely even a kink.
I know, but so I did see something similar. You know what? The driver who did this isn't going to see this most likely, so I can probably mention it, but I'll save face for him by not mentioning his name. But it was a driver I was commentating on this year, and it was like first race of the season where, first of all, he clattered into a back marker with a rather clumsy, like up the inside move, and then he was like facing the. It was a choice of reverse or just drive through the gravel, and he just drove into the gravel and immediately got beached. So yeah,
but at least that was during a race.
Yes, it was. It was true that he had gotten into the race at the very least. But even I in the commentary box was like, "Don't put it in the gravel."
But Stroll's one, it wasn't even under racing pressure. That's right. No. I'm so sorry to laugh, but a lot of times, you laugh at the Maldonado one, and you go, "I'd probably struggle to change settings going at full speed around Sepang." Yeah. But I think if I could operate an F1 car, I wouldn't have done that. What Stroll did.
Maldonado was the driver who hit a marshal in Monaco in a yellow flag zone, and like properly crashed in a yellow flag zone and hit a marshal. So he never should have been in F1 anyway. But I feel like it's the context of it that makes it worse, though. It's the fact that his mechanics went through the ringer to get those cars ready for the race.
Oh, that's actually not funny, isn't it? Yeah.
And then Lance goes and does that, and that's how he repays them.
Well, it's fixed for next time. So it's fixed for Vegas already. So you could say they were going to have to fix it anyway. Anyway, I went down this dark path of looking up all these incidents, and there was a Formula 3000 driver in Monaco that pulled over to celebrate with his pit crew. But it wasn't... have you seen that one?
It was...
but it wasn't... His pit crew weren't far enough along, so he never crossed the line and ended up getting overtaken.
He got beaten to the line. On the last lap.
I'm going to share some of these on Twitter, I think, because they're so funny.
And I remember that was because it was the Arden that won it, I think. And that was Christian Horner's first year, I feel like, as a team principal when he was at Arden.
So that was their first... Is that how they got their first win?
No, I don't think that was their first win, but it was very early in Christian Horner's career as a, non-racing driver.
Yeah.
Because he was a driver in Formula 3000.
That actually, thinking about it, that's the worst one I saw. Obviously, it isn't Formula One. Lewis Hamilton is up there for one of the worst retirements. I think 2000.
China?
No,
sorry. Not,
so the China one,
Canada.
Canada, yeah. The Canada pit
Canada.
lane. The China one, he'd been left out in 2007, and he was just at the mercy of the ridiculous decision not to change the tyres, and that's what all the conspiracy...
He was crying for new tyres,
yeah. So I'll let him off that one, but the pit lane one, where he just sent it into the back of Raikkonen at a red light on the pit lane, and then Rosberg hit him as well. So obviously Rosberg was unsighted. That was definitely a Hamilton one. There's a few, but when someone said, is that the worst one you've seen? I can't think of anything that matches the Stroll one. And like I said, I just can't stop watching all the different angles. When there's a new angle, I'm like, wake up, kids. There's a new angle of Stroll driving into the barrier. Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a distraction. Alpine, so Gasly versus Jack Doohan, that's exciting. Jack Doohan's really highly rated. It seems like a really smart cookie. He's, I guess he's got all the credentials. He was raised in the right way.
Definitely, he's from a racing family.
Well, there we go. So in the
very successful racing family.
In the Downton Abbey version of like Formula One, he's from good breeding stock. He's got names and titles and lands. But Gasly is a difficult one to go up against. So if you could pick which sort of midfield driver that you're going to go up against as a rookie, you've got the choice of Ocon and Gasly. It's probably fairly even, to be fair. But if he goes and looks good against Gasly, that's good for his reputation.
Yeah, I mean, we do kind of think it's going to be quite a short-lived career with Alpine at the very least under its guise, because we're all thinking that team's in for sale mode, regardless of what happened in Interlagos.
They said it's definitely not for sale. Why would they? Why would they lie to protect the sale price?
Well, they've just boosted it though with the double podium in Interlagos. So
that really has saved their season, isn't it? They're up to 5th now.
I know, right? Think about how much more cash they're suddenly getting. Think about all that wind tunnel time they've lost, those Spanners. God,
I honestly thought
they give the points back.
But they might be disappointed. They might actually be disappointed with that result from that point of view.
I really want to sit down with someone from a Formula One team and say, give me a metric and show me on a graph, potentially, the value of the money you gain per position in the Constructors' Championship against the detriment of the wind tunnel time and CFD time you lose as a result of it.
Well, see, I think that kind of championship reward in money terms works better when you had the privateers. I don't think it really works against Renault Group. Isn't that the richest car manufacturer group in the world? They don't care about your little paltry 10 million for another grid position.
Is it? I don't think it is the Renault Group, is it?
For Alpine?
Maybe. Do you know what? You're going to make me double check that, because suddenly I can't remember if it's that or if it's the Mitsubishi alliance with the other ones that I can't remember the names of.
But I think it's flawed. I think it's flawed giving out the prize money. I think why not have the prize money linked with where your highest car finishes then as well, or split it between the two. And then you'd see.
You mean the Drivers' Championship?
So I'm saying link. Yeah, I didn't say the word's good, but link some of the prize money to the Drivers' Championship instead.
Oh well, I don't know.
All right. Anyway,
what I will say that the Alpine does not invest in that team though, do they? Let's be real. No. There's so little. They hate it so much they shut down the engine program. So
it's like that disappointing child who you are legally obliged to feed, but you're just waiting until they're 18 so you can kick them out.
Exactly.
Okay, so only a couple of teams left. I didn't plan on doing the rundown, but it does end in Sauber, which we never finished off talking about. Williams with Albon and Sainz. That's an interesting one. That's all new, but they're not rookies.
Grand lineup.
Yeah, they are. And then Yuki Tsunoda versus whoever. He's sat there in his AlphaTauri going, "Bring me the next one. I have dispensed with your Antipodeans." He'll be completely thrown to not be fighting an Antipodean though.
I mean,
Where was De Vries from? Where's De Vries from?
The Netherlands.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. For some reason in my head he was South African. And then Haas. I don't know why. What's De Vries? I'm going to let myself off because there aren't a lot of South Africans of Dutch origin. I'm going to let myself.
Maybe
off
I don't know. I don't really know enough.
That's where
about
the language
country,
comes from. Yeah. So, the Afrikaans one. Haas. I'm going to have got that wrong. I've made an embarrassing howler, I suspect. Haas have got Behrman against Ocon. And now this one, I think this is going to be clear air between Ocon and Behrman. I know it's sacrilegious as a Brit to not be excited about Behrman, but I'm not excited about Behrman at all.
You're kidding me, mate.
No.
Tell me why. The rookies.
All right, tell me his credentials. Tell me why Behrman, who we've never heard of.
I swear we did this like 7 months ago.
Well, let's
when he
do
did
it again.
Jeddah, but I will do it again. Okay, in his rookie year of Formula 2 last year, he had more wins than anyone else. This year, he has been going toe-to-toe with Antonelli as teammates at Prema, where the car has been incredibly difficult, don't get me wrong. But he's had such an impressive junior career as well. Just in that first year of Formula 2, he was a winning machine and was, I think, the best placed rookie in the field as well last year. So now in his second year of Formula 2, that it's hard to take over that experience because, of course, Formula 2 got a new car this year. But the amount of testing he's done in Formula 1 machinery as well, and Haas think he is something special. Ferrari think he's something special as well. It's why he's got the Haas seat. I think of all of the battles between the rookies and the teammates, that is going to be one of the closest ones, even though Doohan must have done 1,000,000 miles in an Alpine by now.
All right, so you've got your facts, but I've got vibes. So
okay.
I've got a vibe that the Saudi one where he subbed in was actually a bit of a non-event. because he didn't get the practice sessions or anything. So Ferrari did,
exactly. No, he got 1 hour.
But Ferrari did the really responsible thing of basically not giving him a full mission. They put him on soft tires and said, "Bring it home," and he did. He finished basically the last of the top teams, and
he got like 7th or something.
Yeah, and he got through the kind of the lower midfield, but he wasn't obviously anywhere near Leclerc's pace, nor would you expect him to be under those scenarios. And then he subbed in twice this year.
Yeah, for Haas.
Yeah. So obviously a bit harsh to judge him on the rain affected Interlagos, because that looked like an absolute nightmare. Huh?
He scored points in Baku.
Okay. All right. You're making a case, but I've just got. I'm going to take my vibes through to 2025 and say I think he's going to be up against it against.
I cannot wait for Behrman to outqualify Ocon in the first. First race.
If that happens, then I'll have to justify some reasons why that would be, and create a narrative around that, the pro Behrman agenda at Haas. I know we wind Matt up, but I do think Ocon is broadly underrated. Generally.
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
All right. And that brings us all the way back then to Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. So the thing with Sauber, what have you heard from the ground about the Audi effort? Because I read something somewhere that actually they're being sold to a Qatar group, and so that the Audi thing is dead on arrival. And that confused me, because apparently Audi were coming in with an all singing, all new dancing engine, and they were 100% committed. But I've never got the vibe that Audi effort is actually a commitment.
Yeah. So there was a lot of singing and dancing. There was an investment made, and then there was a show of like, no, we're serious. We're going to buy 100%.
$1 billion.
And someone turned around to me and said, well, just make it easier to sell. Very pessimistic, but very true.
It is true, isn't it? Yeah. You don't have to ask anyone.
And behind closed doors, there's a lot of... How best to describe what's happening?
Come on, coward, say
with
it.
With the upper heads, clashing of personalities, we'll say, which is why almost all of the initially announced staff for the Sauber Audi project have gone, and why almost anyone who was announced this year wasn't originally on the project. I mean, don't get me wrong; they are now bringing in some really important people and very experienced people who are very good at their jobs. But there's still this lingering question mark over the true commitment to the project. So I guess we'll find out.
What aren't you telling me, Chris? What aren't you telling me?
No, this is just all I know. Okay. Like there's no one apart from the boss of Audi knows what they're going to do about it, really. And maybe they haven't even made a decision on it. All we really know is that they're going to build an engine.
I really think when these manufacturers come in, everyone just kind of goes, oh, it's a big car maker. That's it. They're going to be committed. But I honestly think like mostly they're just trying to sell cars, get along, worrying about their share price. No one's saying, right, let's pivot towards Formula One and have a Formula One team. It's a huge project until an individual, say at Renault or Audi or Porsche, turns around and says, we should do it. And they're the one pushing for it. And like Porsche made a really big kind of concerted push. And people were talking about them buying Red Bull at one point. But the thing with these companies is people rotate, they move on, they get sacked, they get promoted. And then the next person who comes in is like, oh, right, we suddenly own, 60% of Sauber. What do we do? Can we just...
Exactly what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, can we sell it? Well, I mean, we could. But you know what would make it easier to sell is if we just bought out... Well, the guy that's there, he's not going to want to sell it. Actually, the guy that is there at the moment could not care less and is desperate for it to be sold and moved on. So I think it's been a kind of a bit of a sad situation there with Sauber. And I'm not expecting anything from Audi now at all.
Even an engine?
Well, I don't know. I was really surprised that they'd committed to build an engine at all.
To be fair, they've already, like, it exists and it's run on the test bed. So I think at this point there's no going back.
Well, okay. Well, there we go. I think there is. I think there is a sunk cost. I think if it hasn't gone beyond a certain stage and they're not buying the team, I'd imagine that fizzles away. And look at Alpine. Even Alpine are like, well, it just makes more sense to buy one of the good engines. And the whole the whole concept. I just want to say the whole concept of the engine formula seems to have died a death. They made it much too complicated. People got stung. People have looked at the early Honda things as a cautionary tale. They've looked at Renault, who have made racing engines since the dawn of time, and they've really struggled to do it. I can imagine a world where really you just end up with Ferrari and Mercedes and Honda supplying all the teams.
Yeah. So I cannot remember what my initial point was going to be.
I bested
the regulations, but the So the difference between Renault and Audi, I think, is that Renault has sort of always been uncommitted. Really, like the boss at Renault does not give a toss about Formula 1.
They had to be convinced. Yeah,
they had to be convinced, and they're withdrawing in all but name at the moment, really. Because even they took the Renault name off it and was just like, it's an Alpine now. Whereas Audi have had to sort of come into it, really, haven't they? But even when I think back to how Mercedes came in, and their initial investment into Brawn was tiny. And suddenly they had to spend more and more and more money to get into Formula One. And now they love the fact that they spent 8 years dominating the sport, right? And they'll show you that in the car figures as well, which ultimately is what it's all about for these OEMs. So I do think there's a slight difference. But, yeah, what I will say is, Matt, you brought up the regs. We have already kind of admitted as a sport that this engine is not the one, right? Because almost as soon as the 26 regs came out, they started going on about, maybe for 2030 we'll do this instead. Because they were like, this is not actually going very well.
Well, what did we call it at the time? We called them dead. I said it was dead on arrival, those regs.
Yeah. And all the regulations for 2026, all the chassis regulations for 2026 are built to cover up what a monumental boo-boo this engine has become. Like, the reason we're getting rid of DRS and we have movable aero is so that these cars don't stop on a straight because they haven't got enough power.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And look, that's a poor regulation set, but if you want a good regulation set, then look to season 11 of Formula E, and Missed Apex has a Formula E podcast where we just did a little preview show. Forgive the intro. They all got excited about meeting up again. So they all waffled in the intro talking about merch, but I'm going to talk about merch now. But there was some good discussion there, and Brad has listened to it and said that what I was saying about the four-wheel drive it was correct, basically, and that you wouldn't want the four-wheel drive everywhere anyway because it's inefficient. So what they've got at the moment is a four-wheel drive system where if you do your attack mode, you can then have the front wheel drive as well as the rear wheel drive, and that will help you kind of get on the power earlier and make overtakes and stuff like that. So go and check that out. We'll put links in the show notes below, or you can just search for Missed Apex Formula E on your podcatcher of choice. The MotoGP podcast is also a year old, so happy birthday to our MotoGP podcast. And you can also search for Missed Apex MotoGP on there. That is hosted by Kyle and Jules, and they've got a great team over there. So briefly, I just wanted to mention that we've got some new merch in. It's on Spreadshirt. I will do links to that, and we're not making a profit on it at the moment because the postage to the US was too high. So I've just taken the profit off it so that people can. I'd rather people had it, but I'm rocking the new Missed Apex hat on the YouTube video. We've got our Wrong But First t-shirt range and hoodie range. Oh, well, there's Chris as well. But look, we've changed it so that now the butt is smaller. So it's wrong first, and then you've got a big butt. I've got a small butt on mine.
I've always had a big butt.
And actually, I do like, we've got these bags as well. So the Wrong But First roll-up clip backpacks too. But there's a range of stuff on there, including mugs and stuff. Like I said, we're not making any profit on it, but wear it proudly around car tracks and Grand Prix. And I like that
Well,
hat. This is my favourite hat that we've had.
The hats are great. The T-shirts look great. You will be supporting a great podcast.
No, we don't make any
you-
profit really, but
No, well, look, a little bit. You'll be letting your friends know you have great taste in podcasts. Also, you look real cool.
I think that if you're on the YouTube video, the merch links are actually below the screen. If you have
Down
a look
there
at that,
somewhere.
Dear, down there somewhere, and like and subscribe. And if you want us to profit at all from you liking Missed Apex, then support us at patreon.com/Missed Apex. Go and follow Chris at Chris on Racing.
That's me.
Yeah, and follow me at Spanners Ready. And what, Chris?
I have one more commentary for this year.
Okay.
There is only
You're
one
going to
more time
France.
this year. I'm going back to Paul Ricard for like the 12th billionth time this year to go and commentate on the grand final of the Ultimate Cup series. So,
And where
lots
can we
of
listen to
prototype
that,
racing.
Chris?
It's on YouTube, Ultimate Cup TV. Tune into the prototype race on Saturday evening, which will be at... When are we starting? 5.
Great
finishes
promo
at
spot,
9.
Chris.
5:30 local in Europe, I think.
Okay, great
Look on
promo,
the
Chris.
YouTube.
Really rolled off the tongue. Love that. All right, guys. We'll see you on Sunday. I think we're going to do a tech time on Sunday. So I think we're going to have Matt as a prereq. So no live stream. We've got a few weeks off, haven't we, until Vegas? But, we'll keep doing this. Anytime there's a bit of news, I'll take any excuse to grab one of the crew and jump on, because that's been working quite well.
Yeah, this was fun.
Okay, cool. All right.
Good job I'm not doing anything today.
Don't go on about it. All right. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. You are. No, come on. Right. Somebody said I need bigger buttons, and I think they do have a point. Until next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. I've got little tiny buttons on my Stream Deck. I was hoping my mistakes might be charming, but I've been told no. Why can't I be like a lovable fool? Race cars.